Get them!
Hello, my name is Levi and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be going over my Monk, Invoker, Wyvern, Rolling Magma build, if that's not an oddball one. And so, yeah, I enjoy doing off-meta builds, and I saw that on POE Ninja, this skill is only used by 0.2% of the population, and even by that 0.2, it may not even be the primary skill. And so, yeah, I wanted to do something different to see if I could make it viable and clear all content of the game, and, well, by George, was able to get it done, and it can do just about everything except Max Temple, because Max Temple requires something completely different and unique to be able to clear that with any sort of significant speed and or haste. But as far as regular gameplay, yeah, it completely mops the floor with every bit of content in the game, and I had a lot of fun with it, and it was a lot of fun to try and figure out. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So we'll start off with a weapon. The weapon that I have here is one that I had self-crafted. I wasn't originally going for elemental damage. I wanted to go for physical to see if I could replace the weapon for my bearer, and I ended up landing on this one. The stun buildup and increased stun duration was not necessarily by choice. I had spent 1,800 divines trying to roll the suffixes after I had the prefixes pretty well locked in, and I never got attack speed. I tried using the desecration orb, and it did not work, and I spent 900 to 1,000 divines trying to re-roll it with the Omen of Light, and then to roll it twice, and attack speed never landed, not once. That was even using it was supposed to be somewhat more deterministic than that by using guaranteeing the type of modifier that you have on there, but nope, did not work. And so I just ended up chaos slamming it until we got to a point where I just landed 2 T1 rolls in the suffixes that seemed to have a little bit of synergy. I was like, I'm going to stick with that. The next item I want to talk about is Astrumentus. If you're asking yourself, well, why do you use this? It's because I wanted to go stat stacking. Is it the best idea to go stat stacking? Probably not. But I use Hand of Wisdom to try and bump up more lightning damage and to get more attack speed out of it. But truth be told, you could probably get more damage out of a +3 amulet to projectiles than also just using a pair of gloves that had flat damage on there. But, yep, I crafted this one. I rolled it to about 95 or so, and then I used the 20%. And once I got that, then I went ahead and performed a Val Slam and ended up with the +10 to strength. And so that's where I landed on that particular one. Moving on to the next bit here in just a second after this boss fight. We'll be going into the Hand of Wisdom. I think it's a no-brainer that if you're going stat stacking, this is the just common sense piece to use. I wanted dual sockets on there so that way I could get the attack speed and the increased non-damaging ailments. I could have gone for one that was either 1 to 11 or 1 to 12 in the lightning damage, but the 1 to 11 with 2 sockets was pushing over, I think, 400 divines at the time, so I decided against it. I was like, this is sufficient, so we'll just go ahead and stick with that. Heading into the chest piece, nothing really special about it. I just wanted as much evasion and ES as possible. And so I also wanted a little bit of life regen, because when you bleed life with rage, even at 1 HP using Chaos Knock, you can potentially bleed out and die given enough time. So having any amount of life regen will completely negate that. I also want to reduce ignite duration, because when I use my belt, I get reduced ignite duration up to 100%. And I only use that to fight the Arbiter of Ash. And let's go ahead and head into the next piece, which is going to be the helmet. Once again, just wanted as much energy shield as possible on this, because I took the node that for every 1 ES that I have in my helmet, I gain 2 evasion. And of course, since I'm stat stacking, I wanted a top tier intelligence roll. The faster recharge rate is nice, because getting your ES back much more quickly is always beneficial. For the socketed item, of course, I go with +4 rage. I found that was more beneficial than just simply getting a little bit more ES. For the next part, I'm going to be covering the 3 belts at the same time. I use Headhunter, obviously, for mapping. The next belt that you're going to see, I use for the reduced ignite duration to get to 100% for the Arbiter of Ash. And then the third belt I use is Ingenuity for any other pinnacle boss where I cannot stack rare modifiers. I just simply swap between the 3 depending on what kind of content that I'm doing. And yeah, and so that seemed to make the most sense, because I want to have as much either immunity to any of the things that cause problems, or do as much damage to be able to quickly move through maps. For the next part, we'll be talking about the 2 rings. For one of the rings, I just simply have a lot of flat damage and as much resistance as I can put on there. And for the second ring, I need to have the physical attack damage as mana. That's important for Rolling Magma, because I convert the physical damage to elemental damage for the attack. And of course, it's more flat damage and some more resistances to be able to fill in the voids. Working our way onto the boots. Nothing exciting or special about the boots. Just wanted more intelligence, because intelligence equals damage since I'm using the Hand of Wisdom. Just filling in gaps for lightning resist. Then, of course, 35% movement speed. Getting max movement speed is always important. It's hard to gain movement speed in this game, so the more that you have, the better. It'll make a lot of those pinnacle boss fights significantly easier. Now, moving on to the charms. I didn't really put a whole lot of thoughts into the charms, other than wanted an immunity to freeze, an immunity to stun, and an immunity to slow. I could have gone with a unique slow charm, the one that gives you onslaught every time it's applied, but I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it at the time. But there are better options for some of the charms, but didn't feel I needed to spend a whole lot of time on those. So moving on to the flask. I use Laviandra's Spirit. It's not completely necessary, because I get almost all my mana recovery from Rolling Magma in general. But it is nice to have a little bit more increased flat mana recovery. For the health flask, doesn't matter which one I use, because I have Chaos Inoculation, so it's completely irrelevant unless I'm using Orwas, which I'm not, because I didn't want to spend 700 divs. Getting to the last 2 pieces, for my primary weapon slot, I use a wand with +4, because I want to increase the levels of my Enfeeble as much as possible. Enfeeble is level, I think, 26 with the shield and the wand, and it reduces enemy damage by 60% for white mobs, but by the time you get to the unique bosses, it only reduces it by 30, but it is fairly significant for that. And then moving on to the shield. With the shield, I have +2 to all skills, and I also wanted to have increased curse magnitudes as well. I didn't really care about the level of the energy shield on it, just wanted it for the +2, a little bit of faster energy shield recharge if I have to be in that mode and run around, especially on the Arbiter fight. And yeah, the increased curse magnitude seemed like a no-brainer for it. Alrighty then, after all that, I think it's time to talk about the skill tree and the skill gems. We'll start off with the skill gems first. So going into the skill gems, obviously, Rend, I have it just simply set up to have decent attack speed, more stun build up. I almost never use Rend unless I'm in an absolute pinch and I need to just get off a quick attack. Of course, I'm going the Invoker Monk, so that way I can get Unbound Avatar, because Unbound Avatar is insanely good. It's 40% more elemental damage when you're using it. You have a higher chance of increased elemental ailments, and you have more elemental ailment buildup, so you're more likely to freeze them, more likely to set them on fire or ignite them, and of course more likely to chill under shock. And so that's very helpful. I only need to use this against hard targets or bosses. After that, I use War Banner. I use War Banner because War Banner increases attack damage by 25% and attack speed increased, not more, increased by 25%. This is an amazing skill to use against bosses. It builds up very quickly. As far as the support gems that I have in here, I put mobility on, not because it's necessary. I just needed to fill an extra slot or wanted to, so I can put it down a little bit quicker while still moving. Of course, I used Teresa's Passion. That just simply reduces the amount of glory required to do it. And when you're hitting a hard target or a unique boss, the glory builds up, I think almost 20 glory a hit. And it only takes 100 with this. After that, I just put on increased AoE. I'll put a cooldown of 8 seconds because I don't have to use it for at least 8 seconds. It lasts significantly longer than that. Let's see here, where's the time on it? So yeah, in this mode it lasts 17. If I'm in Wyvern, it lasts 13.35. So the 8-second cooldown's not a big deal. I can still cast it again while it's still up and continue the effect of the War Banner. After that, just increased AoE and of course prolonged duration. I use Berserk because I want to increase my, well, I don't need to, but I want to. It does help significantly with damage. I want to increase the impact of the amount of rage that I have. On this character, I only get 45 rage. I could get a smidge more with my weapon if I wanted to, but there's not really any needs. 45 rage is pretty powerful. After that, I use Ghost Dance for recovery. This is pretty nice. I don't have a ton of evasion, maybe only about 8,500 to 9,000. At one point at my peak, I was closer to 12 to 13,000, but it didn't feel much different between 12 and 13k and 8,500, if I'm being real. It's probably not until you hit that 20,000 evasion threshold that it starts to feel really good. So I pretty much just use it predominantly to recover ES whenever I get hit, because I don't really have any other form of recovery. I do use Overwhelming Presence. Overwhelming Presence is actually surprisingly nice. If they're within my presence, they have reduced ailment threshold. That's why I'm able to freeze hard targets such as the Uber Arbiter of Ash at least once a fight, and I almost stunned him had it gone on just a smidge longer, because reducing the ailment threshold and the stun threshold is significant. You have to be close to them, but honestly, you kind of want to be anyway because you get a lot of overlap with the bounce. I know that the bounce does more damage towards the end of the bounce, but that could be sometimes difficult to try and line it up, and being close to him and lowering his ailment and stun threshold is pretty significant. Now for the Rolling Magma. I used Rakiata's Flow. I was using curses at the beginning to try and lower its resistance, but the fact of the matter is in order to get a comparable curse, you need to have negative 200 on the curse, or between that and exposure, and I have my curse fully decked out. I picked a bunch of curse nodes and it was at 124, so it just was never where it needed to be. I use Rigwald's Ferocity. That just seems like a given. It's just 30% more damage. I don't really care about the 10% loss in attack speed. It hurts a little bit, but the 30% more damage is just significant. This one's a simple one, no brainer. I do all elemental damage, 25% more LE damage, because I have everything converted to elemental with this character. We'll take a look at this damage here. So I do no physical at all, so increasing the elemental, that's why it makes sense. You know, 21 to 38k fire. Let's actually go into Wyvern. 23 to 42, 17 to 33, 74 to 34,000. I do my best to try and balance it out pretty reasonably, so that way I get a good amount of chill build up. I need to make sure I inflict my shocks, then of course put in ignites on, because parts of the skill tree, when they have all the various ailments, I do more damage per type of ailment on them. You have to use Oisin's Oath? Oisin's Oath, probably. However, I butchered that. Oisin's Oath, because we need mana recovery. There's no way to recover enough mana for this skill to be able to use it non-stop. It already uses 243 mana a cast. I cast not quite 2 times a second, 1.68, and when I'm certainly in the War Banner, it's probably close to 2, so I'm burning through 400 mana, almost 500 mana a second. It's impossible to keep up without that. We use less projectile speed, if you're asking yourself why, because the bounces can hit the same target multiple times. The problem with using like multiple projectiles is this bounces side by side don't overlap those. Damage will multiply or impact based upon each additional bounce. We have enough AoE that it feels pretty good even while mapping, as you can see. The AoE is 2.5. I originally had increased AoE on there, instead of this, but less projectiles feels significantly better against the hard targets because you can get a lot of hits going against the same guy, and it's much less likely to jump past them. You can get 3 hits on some of the bigger targets. You can almost get 4. So if you space it properly, if you're within that kind of sweet spot where you're reducing their elemental threshold along with other things, you can get the freeze and the stun build up pretty quickly on there. I have Wing Blast on. I don't use it unless I'm in an absolute pinch to try and get away. Of course, it can be good to spread ignites and cause little explosions, but the truth is as you saw, Rolling Magma just wrecks white mobs, blue mobs, and rares without any difficulty. I was trying to figure out what curse to go with, so I ended up going with Enfeeble. Because I don't have any way to recover life other than just not take damage for around 2 seconds or so, I wanted to just simply reduce the damage of the target that hit very hard. I use Khaleesi's Crescendo. This is nice. Yeah, I've got a 24-second curse when I actually am in that mode. I have my secondary weapon set up to juice up the curse even further, so it's a level 26. For the last 30% of the curse, basically the last 8 seconds, they can't do any damage, assuming the fight's even gone on that long. And obviously in a number of these cases it did. Most map bosses, outside of the first one that you saw me fight, that boss had a significant amount of HP. Most map bosses are between 4 and 8 million. They go down long before the curse even gets to the last 30%. Of course, increase AoE, curse magnitude. We want to basically get this to go off as quickly as possible. So we've reduced the delay on which it will basically take effect. So yeah, the curse delay is 0.22 seconds. So basically it feels like you just simply cast it on the ground and it's already on them. So there's no delay there. We reduce damage by 60%. Against uniques, it's reduced by 30. After that, of course, Eternal Rage. We want to have Rage up non-stop. We don't have anything that consumes Rage, so we just stay at max Rage the entire time. And so that way we can just simply take advantage of the increased damage, of course, in conjunction with the Berserk. Moving forward, yeah, I wanted to do something different, so I went with the Invoker Monk. Of course, I go all the way to Unbound Avidar, I take the increased damage, and then of course I take the Spirit for every ES and every evasion I have in the body armor. We've already taken a look at that. I pad towards as much damage as I can with as much ES and evasion as I can as well, within the realm of reason. I need skill effect, a significant amount of it, to be able to cast more quickly, so that way it feels more comfortable as you're running through the map to be able to do a quick cast, and you just run through the explosions as you're walking forward. So it's kind of cast, walk, cast, walk, cast, walk is kind of the tactic you want to use. A lot of this is just simply based on ES and evasion, plus attack damage and attack speed. I did end up pathing over here as well because I wanted to just get some heavy flat DS nodes because I need more energy shield to be able to take larger hits. And then I wanted to path up here anyway because for my secondary weapon slot, I take significant curse effect and curse duration and things of that sort. Plus this cluster up here is incredibly good. So you get 30% if you've chilled recently, 30% if you've shocked recently, and 30% if you've ignited recently, which we are doing all of those all of the time. And so that feels really good. Take a lot of these nodes, so we get some increased area of effect, increased attack damage. Days would be nice. I probably could have gone harder in the days if I wanted to get more stun build up, but it's more about the elemental threshold more than anything. Of course, more attack damage, blind, more defensive nodes. Everything I picked was basically going towards defensive and offensive. There's nothing really special or unique there. I pad down here to get more increased elemental damage. And nodes like this are fantastic. The increased damage for each type of elemental ailment, I mean, that's 60% basically for one node because I have all 3 ailments. Sometimes, obviously, when I freeze them, get the 4th one up at all times. Originally, I had taken a jewel that would allow me to... I took this jewel slot to allow me to get this when I was going exposure with also this node, another 60%. But once I switched to Rakiata's Flow, you don't want exposure because that's actually hurting you rather than helping you. So we ended up moving off of that because I had pad along this side originally and also got the increased exposure effect. Then of course moved over here, got this jewel socket, and I got a jewel that would allow me to basically take skills within a certain proximity. So I was able to get the overexposure and Stormbreaker. But I moved off that, and that's when I ended up going down here because I wanted to get creative. I'm like, where else can I get it? So I moved down to the south and also down here to get some of these additional nodes as well, because some of these are pretty strong. Let's see here. So yeah, moving to the north, I did take Chaos Inoculation. It wasn't necessary, truthfully. Originally, I had about 1,500 HP pool, which felt pretty good, and I had max Chaos Res. I wanted to give it a shot because I've never done a build in POE 2 that use Chaos Inoc, because I do a lot of off-meta, oddball builds. But yeah, I decided to take it, and then as a result of taking it, I'm like, okay, this is fine. And then I realized, I'm like, dude, I'm getting stunned all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, your stun and ailment threshold is based off your HP pool, unless you have something to convert it to ES. So I took these 5 nodes up here. Taking these 5 nodes solved all my problems. As you can see, I almost never get stunned. I can't say never, but almost never. And I almost never get frozen anymore. If you don't take these nodes and you try and run Chaos Inoc without some sort of increased ailment and stun threshold, you'll be getting frozen all the time, and you'll be getting stunned all the time. It's not a good time. Yeah, that's in a nutshell the skill tree here. Originally, I'd possibly thought about going to protect me from harm, but I don't have enough armored evasion because, let's be real, 6,000 armor is not going to do me any good. So going from 8,500, probably closer to 5,500, is not going to... That amount of armor is not going to negate anything of significance. So I found no point in taking it. I decided just to take the extra 10% of damage at extra cold. There's no reason, because we're not going to any meta skills, to go any of these other areas. I do no crit. I am a no crit build for the most part. I made that decision because going critical strike chance, it's not difficult, but I just didn't want to do it. My bear build goes heavy into crit. My bear arguably is a much more powerful, well-rounded character, but that's also partially because of the skills that I'm using. Furious Slam with Shockwave Totems and Maul are insanely strong. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's the skill tree. And I know that it's getting toward the end of the league, and so ideally, you know, no one's going to be playing too many new builds at this point, but hopefully, as long as they leave Rolling Magma and the Invoker Ascendancy largely untouched, especially involving Unbound Avatar, this will be a viable build for next league. So if you want to mess around and basically almost have, it's not a one-button build because you do have to put down your War Banner and you have to use Unbound Avatar. But as far as the damage dealing skills, if you want to use this one damage dealing skill realistically to clear all content in the game, Rolling Magma will hopefully be viable in 0.5. And so, best of luck. Hope you guys enjoy, and we'll catch you on the next one.